So as we jump into the next episode, Frieren meets a strange man in the woods. He would acknowledge that she's an adventurer and go on and tell his story about how him and a friend of his longed to be adventurers just like her. But as they would grow up, his friend would leave the village. He would offer him to come with him so they could be adventurers together, but he wouldn't accept. And as he's telling Frieren his story, she hilariously responds and says, "Yeah, but why are you telling me this?" He would reply and say, "Because maybe you can reach your hand out and help me." And as the anime pans to him, strangely enough, he's hilariously in a bottomless swamp. He's sinking to the ground. He says, "Help me, please." Frieren says, "Nah, you're dirty." And after waiting and waiting, she would eventually use her spell to rescue him. Soon after Frieren would arrive, she would apologize on Frieren's behalf and say she's going to yell at her later. He would reply and say, "No, it's no problem. She saved my life after all." And as we continue the story, he would leave off to his village. He lets them know that they're having a harvest festival, but he says he would love to thank Frieren for what she's done for him. He would invite them to town. They wouldn't accept it. They would explain that they have to resupply and go to a larger town. And so they depart. And as they leave, he would give them a warning. He tells them, be careful in the woods. And crazy enough, Stark in the next scene gets bit by a venomous snake. He starts to bleed out. Frieren says, "We got to take you back to the village to get you help." Stark says, "Nah, I'm good. It's just a little blood." He then tells Frieren, "My master says you can always tough out poison." Soon anime goes into a flashback of Eisen. In battle, he would have 3 poisonous arrows inside of him, but him being so tough, the poison wouldn't get to him at all. And as Frieren's telling this story to them, Stark says, "See, I can do it too." Frieren would say, "No, that's an exception. Eisen was just that tough." Soon afterwards, Frieren and Frieren would transfer Stark to the nearest village church, but they would get bad news, because as the priest reviews the poison that's in his body, he lets him know that he's going to die soon. After everyone's in shock, Frieren says, "Wait, is there nothing else we can do?" The priest says, "I can let my brother take a look at you." As soon as he says that, a man comes to the door, and to their surprise, it's actually the same man that Frieren had saved early in the woods. He tells his brother, "These are the people who saved me." And as we move along, he would pay them back because using his magic, he would heal Stark. The preacher would then ask Frieren, "What do you think of my brother?" Suddenly, she sees something around the priest's neck. She spots an emblem, and she knows that this emblem represents the most outstanding priest in this area. And with him being that, Frieren tells him, "An expert like you said that Stark wouldn't survive. The poison would kill him. But on the other hand, your brother healed him in a second." She would say, "He's a genius." And as we continue, he would tell Frieren that he got his holy emblem around his neck from Heater, actually. He further explains that this is the only thing that he could be proud of. He would then say, "I'm nothing special. I'm just a regular priest. But my brother, on the other hand, he's exceptional." He would then explain to Frieren that his brother lost his parents when he was small, so he's been taking care of him ever since he was a kid. He continues and says, ever since he was small, he had hopes and dreams of being an adventurer, but that didn't happen. He says, now he's just stuck in this town being a priest. I know he's bored. And as he continues in so many words, he says, "Frieren, could you please take him with you and be an adventurer?" As we continue along, Fern, Stark, and Frieren would talk about this decision of them having him join their squad. Fern and Stark are in, but Frieren is still guessing. And as the anime move along, Stark goes to look for this guy, and he tries to recruit him. He would end up finding him in a bar. He would be gambling, drinking, and smoking. And after a while, Stark would try to recruit him. He would say, "Do you want to join our crew?" He said no at first, but then he put up a wager and said if Stark beats him in gambling, he would join. But the gambling match would go terribly wrong because Stark and Sein would lose all their money and all their belongings. And as we continue to the next scene, Frieren and Fern would arrive. Frieren and Sein would begin to speak. He tells Frieren, "Don't even ask. I'm not joining your crew." He would then explain to Frieren, "I wanted to become an adventurer a long time ago. Those dreams are over with." These words shock Frieren, and she suddenly goes into a flashback. It's of him, the hero, and the rest of the crew convincing her to come with them to fight the Demon King. She wouldn't accept. She would say, "I haven't fought demons in 500 years. It's been too long." Him, the hero, would say, "You're talking about the past. I'm talking about the present." And funny enough, these same words that Himmel told her, she would be saying these same words to Sein. And when she says that, he gets a spark back of him when he was a kid and his friend asking him to be an adventurer with him. But with all that being said, he still declines he wouldn't join. But Frieren says, I don't like you, but you will join our crew no matter what. And with those words, the next scenes of the anime will showcase Frieren, Fern, and Stark following and stalking him, trying to get him to join their crew. They would try over and over to convince him to join, but Sein would think to himself, he can't. He would continue to make excuses. And so as we go to the next scene, Frieren, Fern, and Stark are regrouping. Their plan isn't working. So they would go to Sein's brother. They would ask him for advice on what they could do. What does he like? And after gathering information, they come up with a big plan. They find out that he loves older women. And so Frieren sacrifices herself to try to win him on. Hilariously, she tries to, but she fails miserably. He would decline that offer again. Frieren would say, so you're not going to go and chase after your friend? She says, you'll regret this. Sein says, no, I won't. He told me 3 years. It's been 10 years. He's obviously dead. He tells Frieren it's too late. She says, it's not too late. We're talking about the present. When she says this strikes a nerve in him. He then looks at his brother who's watching over this whole situation. He says to Frieren, I won't leave the same reason why I didn't leave 10 years ago, because I'm not leaving my brother behind. His brother looks at him and says, what? The anime then goes into a flashback. It's of Heater the priest and Sein's brother. Heater believes in him so much, he would actually invite him to the holy city to be a priest. But he would decline. He tells Heater his brother has lost a lot. He don't want to take his hometown from him, so he decides to stay. And so as we return from the flashback, Sein believes that his brother this whole time has stayed in his village because of him. And as he says this out loud, his brother walks towards him fiercely. He becomes angry and slaps him. He tells him, you're wrong. I stayed in this village because I wanted to. I don't have any regrets. He would tell Sein, but on the other hand, you've regretted your decision to not travel with your friend to be an adventurer. He then asks him, how long are you going to regret your decision? After the altercation, we move to the final scene of the anime. Sein would meet back up with Frieren, Stark, and Fern, and I'm guessing he was moved by what his brother told him, because he would tell Frieren that he would agree to become an adventurer with them and join their squad. Sein would say bye to the village people, and the anime would end.